So, I forgot to charge the battery properly on the camera I used for the past two videos, so I reverted to the same camera that I used for the first two phases. So, if it looks a little different, not so much in terms of framing, but in terms of how it captures the colors or lighting, that's probably why. So, that's my bad. But at least I'm able to record. And I have to be somewhere soon because today is March 7th. Right. Yeah, today is March 7th, and my friends and I have tickets to see Captain Marvel tonight. So, yeah. I'm recording it all on the same day, and then I get to watch Captain Marvel. It's a good way to whet my appetite for the movie, I guess. So, the first MCU movie of 2017 was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and it came out in May of 2017. I most recently watched this movie on January 23rd, 2019. There are actually quite a few moments that I really enjoyed just watching it, similar to the first Guardians of the Galaxy, where it still had that feel good movie feel that I really liked. And one of the things that's most apparent was Baby Groot's dancing in the beginning while it's going down. And it's kind of like, you know, trying to maintain optimism in when the whole world is falling apart around you or when life is getting you down. So that was fun to watch and a nice little reminder. I really like the small Drax and Mantis moment when Drax is just watching a fountain and he's thinking about his wife and daughter and what they meant to him. And then Mantis, as an empath, I think that's what it's called, touches Drax, and then she feels what he feels, and then she gets overwhelmed with emotion. She gets overwhelmed with the emotion that Drax is feeling. It was a sweet moment, and I guess kind of a reminder to be empathetic to those around us. I really liked it when Rocket and Yondu were kind of having an argument, and then Yondu knows the type of person that Rocket is, and he says that, you know, Rocket is the most scared of all, and he's just, you know, just a little bit of love reminds him of how big that empty hole inside of him actually is, because he can relate. Sometimes you're afraid of getting close to people because you're afraid of getting hurt again, or you're afraid of hurting them. I don't use my head to fly the arrow, I use my heart. Welcome to the frickin' Guardians of the Galaxy. Except he didn't say frickin'. The biggest thing that stood out to me when I saw this movie, and every time I see this movie, is, you know, that theme of the father-son relationship. And of course, how the soundtrack fits into that. So I feel like a lot of my previous videos come off as complaining. Probably because they kind of are. So this one, it kind of takes a step back, and, you know, I acknowledge and appreciate the privileged life that my parents were able to give me, especially as the son of two immigrants. And I'm not looking at this in a way that, you know, I should be grateful because, you know, people have it worse. I don't really like that. I don't really like that idea. I mean, yes, objectively, some people do have it worse. I'm fortunate enough to have both of my parents in my life. You know, I'm fortunate enough that they let me move back in and things like that. But, you know, because then if we live by that, when does it stop? You know, on the one hand, yeah, people have it worse, and then also people have it better. When does it end? And then also, you know, it kind of, I feel like when we do that, we're kind of looking down on the people who do objectively have it worse, and we're using that as a reason to feel better about ourselves. And I don't really like that. The movie does for me is it puts into perspective the relationship that I have with my parents. Even though this movie was focused on the father-son relationship, it also did put into perspective just how much time I spend with my mom. My dad is like semi-retired, so he goes back and forth between here and his homeland every year. And more often than not, I have to be home to be with my mom to help take care of her. They're fine. It's not that they can't take care of themselves, but I can't help but feel the need to be around to help them, especially when they ask. And thinking about it, my parents did the best that they could, and they continue to do so. They try to support me where they can, and where they can't, they just try to let me do my own thing. And I realize that that is a privilege that not a lot of people have. They really tried to work out their schedules so that I would always be with at least one parent. They weren't gonna get a babysitter, and the only babysitter I had was my grandmother, my Lola. But sometimes she'd be elsewhere, so my parents had to make sure at least one of them was with me at all times. So I remember, even though I was super bored, my dad would take me to his work site. He wouldn't put me to work, but he would just bring me there so that he could watch me and I wouldn't be at home alone. And my mom works as a nurse, so she typically works 4 days, then off for 3 days within a week. And then in those days, she'd fill in. If I had a show or they'd try to show up at graduation, and they did. And I knew some people that their parents wouldn't do it, and they were fine with that. But sometimes these things were sometimes more for my parents than they were for me. And I realized that, I wish I had a better way to say it, but I kind of carry some of their hopes and dreams. Kind of. Maybe that's why sometimes they're hard on me, or sometimes they make me cry, or they hurt me. But that's family. We got hurt, we make up. We're still family by the end of it. I have no idea where I'm going with this. Just kind of rambling on for this one. In addition to being grateful for my parents, I'm also very grateful for the friends and the people that I've encountered in my life. And for my really close friends, they're kind of on that side where they're not the family I was born with, but they're the family I chose. And I'll always be grateful for them. Even when they sometimes annoy the crap out of me, or I annoy the crap out of them, we're still really good friends and family by the end of it. And I hope that, in the future, when we're in our 30s, 40s, 50s, we'll still be good friends and in each other's lives. And if we're lucky, our kids will be in each other's lives. I guess this was just the appreciation post, if you will, of my reflections, because it's always good to take a step back and look at the things that you're grateful for, look at the things that you can appreciate, and recognize that I was given things that not everyone else has. So, even though everything I've done so far sounds like complaining, I do recognize the life that I was able to live, and how that was only possible because of the friends and family that I have in my life. So, thank you. Also, quick note, before when I did this, in my previous recording attempts for this movie, I talked a lot about my dad, because in the last scene when the funeral scene where Yondu is being cremated essentially, and everyone else shows up for the funeral, and everyone is launching their fireworks for the Ravager funeral. And then the song Father and Son by, I believe it was Cat Stevens, plays. Oh, that hit me right here. And, that, the soundtrack for this movie was really good, and it's the stuff I grew up on because of my dad. So, I couldn't help but think of my dad when I was watching this movie. Although, if it were my dad, he'd probably want the Rod Stewart version of Father and Son, because he's a big fan, and I remember that was the first concert we ever went to. I was kind of just dragged along because I was still kind of too young to stay at home by myself. Well, that's what my parents thought. But it's one of my dad's favorites, and I guess now it is mine too.